Welcome to Kaleidoscope S4IG. Let's talk. In Sri Lanka, 1/3 of all boys fail their O-levels. More than half of those who do pass their O-levels fail their A-levels. 70% of Sri Lankan boys are failures in education by the time they are 19 years old. In state universities, most fields are dominated by women. The boys still dominate STEM, but women are dominating the HEAL fields. That's health, education, administration, and literary. Today on Let's Talk is scientist, conservationist and public policy advocate Rohan Pethiyagoda taking on problems with boys' education in Sri Lanka, tracing the problem from adolescence to adulthood, learning deficits and understanding how education ties in with political outcomes, both good and bad. I got to have a chat with him about boys and why they are failing in education in Sri Lanka and what we can do to stop it. Rohan, welcome. Interesting subject to talk about. What exactly is the problem that boys face in education?
Well, in Sri Lanka, Savithri, when you look at the statistics, we find that 1/3 of all boys, twice as many as girls, fail the O-levels. The 2/3 that survive the O-level go on to sit the A-level, and there, half of all boys fail. Again, twice as many as girls. So by the time they are adults, fully 2/3 or more of Sri Lankan young men begin their adult life as failures. This is a horrible thing. It doesn't mean just that they don't go to university, because even if you pass your A-levels, the chances are like 1 in 5 that you get into university. That is not the point. The point is the stigma of failure, that you ended your school career rather dismally, having had to go home. 15% of those boys who fail their A-levels fail all 3 subjects, 2.5 times as many as girls. So this gender disparity is something that bothers me, apart from the failure rate on its own.
Where does educational disparity actually begin to occur between in boys and girls?
So I think it happens in adolescence, that's where it mainly happens, but it also, the international literature suggests that it happens much earlier. Any parent who's got a boy and a girl as children know that the girls are much more precocious than boys. They're a year ahead of boys in terms of development. The problem that boys face is a temperamental problem, that their temperament means that they pay less attention. Because we see this manifesting, for example, in ADHD, attention deficit disorders, 2.5 times more in boys than girls. Language learning difficulties like dyslexia, 2.5 times more. And then you take problems like autism, for example, 4 times higher in boys than in girls. So boys have all these disadvantages which translate into learning disadvantages as they go through childhood.
So you've noted also that biological differences between males and females translate to learning difficulties. What made you come to that conclusion?
But physiologically, we know that the brains of boys and girls develop in completely different pathways. So just recognizing that fact means that we should conceive it possible that boys and girls deserve different treatment when it comes to education. I know this is a terrible thing to say, but it's a fact. And especially given that we've struggled for a century to bring girls on par with boys worldwide, in education, in jobs, in opportunities, in marriage, and we've achieved this to a large extent. I mean, Sri Lanka's definitely crossed that hurdle. The question that I get asked a lot is, when I make that statement, but we don't see women CEOs as much as we see men. And I think the reason for that is not because of any kind of discrimination. I think it's because many women lack the kind of masculine aggressiveness. Psychopaths amongst women are very few. Psychopaths amongst CEOs, I think, are very many. Corporate CEOs tend to be ruthless, unpleasant people. and so it's a man's world out there.
What are the problems that men and boys face that deserve more airtime?
University graduation rates in Sri Lanka now, 70% to 30% girls versus boys. These translate into influential jobs in every field of society. So the boys are being left behind. Girls don't want to marry, I mean, a girl graduate wouldn't want to marry a layabout boy who doesn't have a good job. The ones I'm concerned about are the failures, the ones that are not doing well, the boys. Their life outcomes tend to be terrible. So you need to remember 2 things here. One is, if you go and look in Balikata prison, 95% of the inmates are men. If anyone says that men and women are the same, that is the question I have to ask them. Why are there not more women in prison? Men and women behave very differently. Let's face that fact. Rather than pretending that they're equal and deserve equal treatment, they don't. On the other end of the spectrum are men who aren't turning to crime, they are turning to self-pity. And this translates into much higher suicide rates, for example, amongst middle-aged men who are underperforming, the so-called deaths of despair. Men are turning to suicide, they are turning to alcoholism, drug abuse, issues like this, that really destroy their lives from within. So at both ends of this spectrum, the violent end and the non-violent end, men are in deep trouble.
If you like our show, don't forget to subscribe, follow and like us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube.